Shalom, shalom. Want to give honor and glory to Yahweh Shem Yahushai, right? We're going to get into these laws, right? It's been a minute since I put the laws back on my channel. You know, you got new brothers and sisters in this truth, you know, out there on the highways and byways, they learn, don't eat shrimp, crab, pork, and lobster, not breaking the Sabbath, grow their beard out, put the fringes on, right? The sincere milk, right? Give them, like 5, 6 commandments to work on, not smoking weed, etc., right? So right now we need to get into these laws, right? Okay, right, because it's the only way we got to walk in the laws of the Lord, right? Let me get the precept. Psalms 119 and verse 1. Blessed are the undefiled in the way who walk in the law of the Lord, right? So meaning the Most High is dealing with the brother who is walking in the law of the Lord, right? And so the scriptures are about, obedience to the Most High. And that's what it is all about at the end of the day, the covenant that, the Most High set up between himself through his son, Yahushua, and our forefather, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? And the 12 tribes that are here on this earth today, right? And we hold up our end of the covenant by being obedient to the Most High laws, right? Okay. Verse 2. Blessed are they that keep his testimonies and that seek him with the whole heart. Verse 3. They also do no iniquity. They walk in his ways. Verse 4. Thou hast commanded us to keep thy precept diligently, right? So meaning the original context of a precept is a commandment, an ordinance. So Moses gave our forefathers precepts, right? Okay. Let me get a precept on there, right? Let's go to Hebrews. I want 9 and verse 19. Get to it. It's Hebrews 9 and verse 19, right? For when Moses had spoken every precept to all the people according to the law, he took the blood of calves and of goats with water and scarlet wool and hyssop and sprinkled both the book and all the people, right? So meaning Moses giving the people precept and their judgments and laws and ordinances and statutes and commandments, right? And testimonies, and all these things go in the Torah, right? And sometimes the law is there, but it's found upon other statutes, which are somewhat sub-laws, for lack of a better term, right? And then you have, ordinance, which is pure instruction, ordaining you how to walk in the Most High, right? And then you have like judgments, which are, precaution penalties when you break those laws or those ordinances, right? And these are the things we have to know when we come in this truth, right? All right. And then, hey, we can know how to walk uprightly in the land of the living, right? So let's get into it. All right. Because like I said, this is Exodus 21 chapter going into the judgment of the laws, right? Let's go to Exodus 21 chapter. This is Exodus 21 chapter 21 and 1. Now these are the judgment which thou shalt set before them, right? So meaning there are judgments that have, to go out when the laws are broken, which is called penalties, right? Verse 2. If thou buy an Hebrew servant 6 years, he shall serve, and in the 7th he shall go out free for nothing, right? So meaning you might have a brother work for you, and he may, be on hard times, and he worked for you for 6 years, and on the 7th year, you have to let him go free, and it's the law, right? Verse 3. If he came in by himself, he shall go out by himself. If he were married, then his wife shall go out with him. Verse 4. If his master have given him a wife, and she have borne him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be be her master's, and he shall go out by himself, right? So this is the same this is somewhat similar to Jacob's situation, right? To a certain extent, right? But not all the way. Remember, Jacob had, to work for Laban for 7 years, and Laban gave him a wife, right? But the difference is Laban was part of the deal, and there was a dowry set up that Jacob would have to work for 7 years, right? But you might be in a situation where a brother might give you his daughter, but guess what? That's still his daughter, his possession at the end of the day. And guess what? His daughter returns back to him, and that man leave without his wife and children, right? Verse 5. And if the servant shall plainly say, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free. Verse 6. Then his master shall bring him unto the judges, he shall also bring him to the door, or unto the doorpost, and his master shall bore his ears through with an awl, and he shall serve him forever, right? So, man, gotta think about it, brothers and sisters. Man, this is a tough situation right here, all right? Now, because you had to make and say, this was a tough decision to make, right? And say, do I really want to take his daughter, right? Because if you took his daughter and fell in love with her, right, and you are going to have to stay with that guy, and you have to get your ear bored through with an awl. So if you ever look it up, an awl, like a AUL, you know what I'm saying? That's what they were doing in the ancient world, right? So you would stamp you, for lack of a better term, right? And had these guys walking around with these big oil in their ears, right? And you knew what kind of guys these were, permanent workers for another man forever, right? So, right. So it's we gotta learn how to, deal with our servants, right? All right. So if I had a servant, we gotta know how to deal with them. Okay. So let's go to Sirach 33 and verse. I'm gonna start with verse 23. This is Sirach 33 and 23. At the time when thou shalt end thy days and finish thy life, distribute thy inheritance. Verse 24. Father, Slaki, a wand and burdens are for the ass, and bread, correction, and work for a servant. All right. So, meaning the Lord said, you give your servant bread and you give him work. So the Lord telling you how to deal with your servant, right? And also remember, Ecclesiasticus is more of a deep explanation, right, of the law. Okay. So if you want to know more particular law, just read, Ecclesiasticus. All right. Better known as Sirach. All right. Verse 25. Verse 25. If thou set thy servant to labor, thou shalt find rest. But if thou let him go idle, he shall seek liberty. Right. Meaning if you have a servant and you have to put him to work. Right. Verse 26. A yoke and a collar do bow the neck, so are tortures and torments for an evil servant, right? So meaning if you had a rebellious servant and things, will happen to him, right? Okay. Let's go back to Exodus 21, okay? Because, you might have for example, if you hit your servant in the back of the head with a rod or something, how do you deal with that situation? Let's go to it. Let's go back to Exodus 21. I think I want verse 20 or 21. Verse 20. Exodus 21 and 20. And if a man smite his servant or his maid with a rod, and he die under his hand, he shall be surely punished, right? So, meaning you might hit him in the back of the head with your staff because he might not have been picking the grapes, or he's talking back to you, etc., etc. So with a rod, and he died, meaning you can't kill your servant or shoot them or whip them to death, and you can't do, you know what I mean, what Esau did to us, right? And we have to have control of our anger, and if you lash out too much, and you will get jammed up, right? So you have to have some temperance with your servant, okay? Right? Verse 21. Notwithstanding, if he continue a day or two, he shall not be punished, for he is his money, right? So you might hit your servant, and you might, thought that he died and he came back, but he got back up, and he is kind of hopping and, a little bit because you didn't kill him, right? But he's going to learn his lesson. Now, give him a day, or he might, be in a coma, and you might be nervous. And now on the second day, he's still in a coma, right? And you're walking back and forth, and, people asking you about your guy. And on the third day, he probably come to his senses, right? Now you're relieved that he didn't die. So you had the servants that you have to kind of, know what you were dealing with, because you got to have a mild manner temperance, right? Okay, right. So it's just like when you were dealing with your servants, your brethren, right? Our servants, right? So you got to treat your brother good, okay? Let's go to the precepts. I want Leviticus 25, and I'm gonna start with 30. Start with 39. It's Leviticus 25 and 39, right? And if thy brother that dwell by thee be waxing poor, and be sold unto thee, thou shalt not compel him to serve as a bondservant, right? So meaning you might have a brother that, more wealthy, well off, and then a brother fall on hard times, right? So you can't treat that brother like a heathen, right? And use him and just for hew of wood and draws of water. You can't treat him as a bondman, right? Verse 40. But as an hired servant and as a sojourner, he shall be with thee, and shall serve thee unto the year of Jubilee, right? So meaning you got to treat him as a hired servant, and that's one of your employees, and you treat your brother good, right? And he worked at those years that he had to, and on the 7th year, he can go free, right? Verse 41. And then shall he depart from thee, both he and his children with him, and shall return unto his own family, and unto the possession of his father shall he return, right? So meaning, you brothers, can depart and shall return unto, your own family, and go back to, to your father's possession, right? 42. For they are my servants, which I brought forth out of the land of Egypt. They shall not be sold as bondmen, right? So meaning these are the Lord's servants, right? The children of Israel. And they are not meant to be slaves to, to their own people, right? 43. 43. Thou shalt not rule over him with rigor, but shall fear thy God, right? So meaning you can't be a taskmaster over your brother and beat him and whip them, right? And the Lord command us, to treat each other as brothers, okay, right? So, and also, and another thing, if you brothers own your own business today, and you hire your brother, and you supposed to pay him at the end of the day, right? And not supposed to withhold that amount of money for a week, all right? Okay. So, right. Now, let's go back. That's just 21 to verse 7. Exodus 21 and 7. Okay, this is Exodus 21 and verse 7. And if a man sell his daughter to be a manservant, she shall not go out as the manservant do, right? So meaning because he's selling her as a wife, and she can't go out after 6 years, right? Like a manservant do, right? After 6 years. Okay, verse 8. In Slaki, verse 8, if she please not her master who had betrothed her to himself, then shall he let her be redeemed to sell her unto a strange nation. He shall have no power, seeing he hath dealt deceitfully with her, right? So, meaning this guy might, this guy, man, he might, pay a dowry for this woman and betroth her, right? It might regret it. And he might say, it wasn't worth it. And this is not what I thought it would be. So that man has to redeem that woman back to her father, right? So he has to say, like, okay, for example, Sister Susanna, for a lack of a better term, right? She's not pleasing me. And I paid 300 shekels of silver for her, and I'm going to give her back to the father, and the father might be mad, right? Because he might have been expecting to hold on to that money, and he might have fallen on hard times, and now he got to give that money back up, right? And he might be mad at his daughter and questioning her, and saying, what did you do wrong, right? And this was a big thing in the ancient world, and it wasn't easy, like we got today. We can just go to temp service and get some money, right? But back then it was, cattle, oxen, land, and that situation was a big deal, right? So, and that would be, also, hey, that would be that'd be very wicked, to sell a man's daughter to a strange nation, right? And he bought that, he bought that man's daughter for 50 shekels, right? And in his mind, he was thinking about selling her, to an Egyptian. Right. Okay. Right. Selling them for like, what? 300 shekels. Okay. So you had he had a lot of fraud going on back then, like they do today. Flipping cars. For example, I paid $200 for this car. Now I'm trying to sell it to my brother for $3,500. Right. So it's just, we can't be deceitful with, our brothers, in this thing, okay? Right? So that's just like, you can't be a con artist, okay? No, that's like a huckster, like, a con man. Let's go to that precept. I want in, I think it's in Sirach 26. Sirach 26, and I'm gonna start with verse 20. I think I'm gonna start with 28. I'm gonna start with verse 28. Okay. This is Sirach 26 and 28. There be two things that grieved in my heart, and the third maketh me angry. A man, a ward that suffered it poverty, and men of understanding that are not set by me, and one that returned from righteousness to sin. The Lord prepared the such, and one for the sword. Right? Verse 29. A merchant shall hardly keep himself from doing wrong, and huckster shall not be freed from sin, right? So, I mean, a merchant meaning like a salesman, right? We had them in the ancient world, and today as well. And a merchant, be cutting corners, lies, and they'll try to finesse you, and they are just looking for a come up, right? But a huckster mean like a con man, right? Trying to sell you anything, socks, boxers, oil, fake gold, etc., right? And hustler, it should not be free from sin, and you will end up going off scamming, overcharging your people, etc., stuff like that, right? Right. So let's go back. Exodus 21 and verse number 9. This Exodus 21:9. And if he have betrothed her unto his son, he shall deal with her after the manner of daughters, right? So meaning you might buy a woman for your son, and that's what you had arranged it, a marriage. And just like Abraham sent his servant to go get Rebekah for Isaac, and Abraham, he didn't look at Rebekah with another eye, and Abraham treated her like a daughter, right? So basically, that's where the term, daughter-in-law and son-in-law come in, because it's according to the law of the Most High, right? So, and that's where, Esau, he get that from, right? Verse 10. If he take him another wife, her food, her raiment, and her duty of marriage, shall he not diminish, right? So, a man, a man might have one wife, right? But he might take him another wife, right? And remember, we are ancient people, right? And remember, these Edomites, they the only nation who has promoted monogamy, right? And the Greeks started, and the Romans followed, and every other nation always had more than one wife, right? But our people have been conditioned to Esau's, system, and thinking you can have, thinking you can't have two wives, right? Because when I'm on the highways and byways, I get it all the time. They talk to Hebrew Israelites, and it's like, I got a question for you. I say, what's that? Can you have two wives? I say, of course, it's in our law. I don't know, I can't deal with that. I can't deal with that. Right. So, well, you can't deal with that because, you got a knowledge, wisdom, understanding. Right. Okay. Right. Because, you've been conditioned to Esau's system. Okay. Right. So I hear that all the time, right, when I'm out there on the highways, byways. Right. And that would really turns them off. Okay. Oh, you got two women. Right. But anyway. So, if you get another woman, you got to take care of her, right? So the same way you take care of your first wife, right, with the food that you provide for, and it had to be, a portion of food provided for your second wife as well, right? And you can't shortchange your first wife, right, and give it all to your second wife. And that's what brothers are doing, and saying, I don't love, my first wife anymore, and I have fell out of love with her, and then you get another wife out of lust, and that's wicked, man. Right? And that's why these laws are here, because you had to take care of your first wife the same way that you would take care of the second wife, that you bring in. Okay, and duty of marriage, meaning in the Hebrew, concord, dwell together, sexual cohabitation. So you have to deal with your first wife in every level in righteousness and in quality as your second wife, right? So you can't deprive your first wife, all right? And if she want to have sex, okay? So same concept. If your sister want to have sex, brother, y'all can't deprive y'all wife. The same concept. Brothers want to have sex with your wife. Your sisters can't deprive your husband, right? Okay. Let me go to the precept. That's 1 Corinthians 7:3. Right. First Corinthians 7:3. Yeah, 1 Corinthians 7:3. Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, slacky, and likewise also the wife unto the husband, right? So brothers, when your wife, asks you to have sex, lay with her, right? Okay? Whatever the case may be in righteous, right? And likewise, you wife, you lay with your husband, okay? Meaning don't be holding out and trying to say, I'm tired. You know, you brother saying I'm tired, or I'm watching the big game, etc., etc. No, you have to take care of your wife in righteousness, right? The same way, you know, she had to deal with you. Okay? Right? So let's go back to it. Let's go back to Exodus 21. I want verse 11. 21 and verse 11, right? And if he do not these three, let me read that again. Verse 11. And if he do not these three unto her, then shall she go out free without the money, right? Meaning her food, her raiment, and her duties of marriage. If he don't do these three things, and she has the right to go out free if you are not doing these things, right? Verse 12. He that smiteth a man so that he die shall be surely put to death, right? Meaning, if he murder a man, and he shall be put to death, right? 13. And if a man lie not in wait, but God deliver him into his hand, then I will appoint thee a place whither he shall flee, right? Right, so meaning this is an accident, right? When you murder somebody, and it is called, you know, manslaughter, a lesser criminal offense than murder, right? So, you know, and we can go for example, you know, in Numbers the 35 chapter, right? Okay. Numbers 35, the classic. Number 35. I want verse, I think it's 16, 15. Number 35 and verse 16. This number 35 and 16. And if he smite him with an instrument of iron so that he died, he is a murderer. The murderer shall surely be put to death. Right? So meaning, if you know, if I hit a guy with an iron rod, right, or assault with a deadly weapon, you know, and you kill him, right? Verse 17. And if he smite him with throwing a stone wherewith he may die, and he die, he is a murderer. The murderer shall surely be put to death, right? So meaning you will be put to death by throwing a stone if the man died, right? So verse 18. Or if he smite him with an hand weapon, or weapon of wood, wherewith he may die, and he die, he is a murderer. The murderer shall surely be put to death, right? Meaning he will be put to death. Verse 19, the revenger of blood himself shall slay the murderer. When he meeteth him, he shall slay him, right? Meaning, okay, the revenger of blood is if I had, say for example, a biological brother in the spirit, right? And we have the same father, and we got a brother from, let's say, from the tribe of Reuben, okay? And he killed one of us, and we are obligated and we are justified if we go kill that guy that killed one of us. But guess what? This guy have 6 cities of refuge that he can go to, and you have, you know, like 3 on the side of the Jordan River and 3 on the other side of the Jordan River, right? And he better get to one of those cities, right, before we get to him. And if he don't make it to that city, and we kill him and bury him, and we go back and we go back where we came from, right, to our home, and guess what? We are justified from cutting that man down, you know, and that's the revenger of blood, right? And a man can do that. But guess what? But if that guy get to that city of refuge, and he can stay there, but if he leave that city of refuge, and if we find him out there and we are going to kill him, so he has to stay in that city until the high priest die. in which that could be, a long time. So when the high priest died, and that man can go back home where he from, right? And you can be mad that the man can go back home without being killed, but you can't kill him because he served his time. So, right. Verse 20. But if he thrust him, let me read again. Verse 20. But if he thrust him of hatred, or hurl at him by land of weight, that he die. Verse 21. Or in enmity smite him with his hand, that he die. He that smite him shall surely be put to death, for he is a murderer. The revenger of blood shall slay the murderer when he meeteth him. Right? Okay. Also, when Yahushua is the ultimate revenger of blood, and it is no refuge for Esau. Okay. Right? Verse 22. But if he thrust him suddenly without enmity, or have cast upon him anything without land of weight, right? Verse 23. Or with any stone wherewith a man, read that again. Verse 23. Or with any stone wherewith a man may die, seeing him not, and cast it upon him, that he die, and was not his enemy, neither sought his arm. It's like he sought his harm, right? Verse 24. Then the congregation shall judge between the slayer and the revenger of blood according to these judgments, right? So meaning it could have been, an accident, and you chopping wood, and the axe had flew off, and hit a brother in the neck, right? And the brother died, and that's an accidental death. But guess what? You really can't go against that guy, right? Okay, right? Because you got laws, accidental death, right? Let me go to it. I want Deuteronomy. I think 19th chapter. This is Deuteronomy 19, and I'm going to start with verse 4. Deuteronomy 19:4. And this is the case of the slayer, which shall flee thither, that he may live. Whoso killed his neighbor ignorantly, whom he hated not in time past, right? Verse 5. As when a man goeth into the wood with his neighbor to hew wood, and his hand fetched it a stroke with the axe to cut down the tree, and the head slipped it from the heave, and lightened it upon his neighbor, that he died, he shall flee unto one of those cities and live, right? So meaning, he wasn't trying to kill him on purpose, right? And he was just chopping down a tree, and he just got caught in the fire, and that's, accidental death, right? Verse 6. Lest the avenger of the blood pursue the slayer while his heart is hot, and overtake him, because the way is long, and slay him, whereas he was not worthy of death, in as much as he hated him not in time past, right? So, right, how can I say this? Man, the avenger of blood pursued the slayer, right? Which his heart is not, meaning they do that in the streets, okay? They do that in the street, and and they call this street justice, right? When you kill somebody's cousin, and they will pursue the slayer, right? And you will be mad, right? And overtake him, because this way long, meaning he might be he could be a old man, and he can't make it to that city in time, so he running, he's an old man, he can't make it in time, but you're a young guy, you fast, you about to catch him, right? And you are going to catch up, with this man, and that guy will try, to talk his way out of it, right? That old man gonna try to talk his way out of it, right? And you might not want to hear it. And that the man is saying, I'm sorry, and I didn't mean it. And it was an accident because I was chopping, he was chopping down wood, and the axe, came off, the heat came off and boom, and hit him in the head. So it was accidental, right? But, a lot of brothers, man, they ain't trying to hear that, they ain't trying to go for that. But hey, he was not worthy of death, though. He did it, to his neighbor without, malice, a forethought, right? Okay? Right? So let's go back. Let's go back to Exodus, 21 and verse 14. Let's go back. So let's go back to Exodus 21 and verse, I think it's 14 or 14 or 15. Where is it? This Exodus 41. This Exodus 21 and verse 14, right? But if a man come presumptuously upon his neighbor to slay him with gall, thou shalt take him from my altar, that he may die, right? Let me get a precept. Because if y'all know the history, what Joab did, right? Okay, let me go to it. 1 Kings 2 and verse 5. This 1 Kings 2 and 5. Moreover, thou knowest also what Joab, the son of Zeruiah, like he did to me, and what he did to the two captains of the host of Israel, unto Abner, the son of Ner, and unto Amasa, the son of Jether, whom he slew and shed the blood of war in peace, and put the blood of war upon his girdle that was about his loins, and in his shoes that were on his feet, right? So, meaning, man, this is another type of killing that can go down, because you can kill somebody in the time of war, or as a revenge of blood, or you can kill if you are enforcing the judgment of the Most High, right? And those are really the only way you can kill somebody, right? But you can't just kill somebody and try to say, well, it was wartime and I was justified. But no, the Lord said this called the blood of war and peace. Remember, Amasa, right, died, and Joab took him, he took him by the beard with his right hand and with his sword, and smote him in the fifth rib in Second Samuel 20 chapter, the 10th verse. But it wasn't wartime. But Joab, he justified himself for that, right? So you can't go kill a heathen and say it's wartime, but that is murder now, right? And we can do that, and that's not that's not of the Most High, man. All right. So that we go chop, an Edomite head off, and we can't act like them Edomites, all right, in the other nations. All right, let's go back to it. Exodus 21, and I want verse 15. Verse 15. And he that smitted his father or his mother shall be surely put to death, right? Right, meaning, man, that's wicked. You smiting your father and your mother, man, you gonna get put to death, right? Surely, you're gonna get put to death, right? Verse 16. And he that stealeth a man and selleth him, or if he be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death, right? So, meaning that's human trafficking, okay? That's sex trafficking, all right? Verse 17. And he that cursed his father or his mother shall surely be put to death, right? So you throwing up curses on your father and your mother, right? Because they don't understand John 3:16, okay? and you throwing them curses that the Most High send fire to their house and send wild beasts to get your father, get to your father, right? And that's wicked. That's a wicked act, right? Okay, and saying I hate my father, so even though your father and mother is off, they're not in the truth, right? And you love, your father and mother, they're not in the truth, but you love them by far, right? Okay, don't disrespect them or nothing like that, right? Okay, right? Because you're gonna get put to death, right, for cursing your father and your mother out, right? Okay, right. So no cursing your father and your mother, okay, right? And let's go to the precepts, all right? Let's talk about them. All right, let's go to Matthew 12. All right, because we can't dishonor our father and our mother, all right? We're going to get judged for that. I want Matthew 12, and where am I start? I'm going to start with 35. This is Matthew 12 and verse 35, right? Okay. A good man out of the good treasure of the heart bringeth forth the good things, and an evil man out of the evil treasure bring forth evil things, right? Meaning a man's heart is going to devise who he is. Likely you are going to, let out your wickedness, or you are going to let out, your sweet and good things, right? In the sight of the Lord, right? Verse 36. But I say unto you that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment, right? So meaning you are cursing out your father and your mother, and you are going to have to give an account of that in the day of judgment, right? 37. For by thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned, right? So meaning you are going to be condemned. And that's why, you have to forgive your brother 70 times 7, right? So no cursing your mother, your father and your mother, all right? Okay? Let's go to, because you cursing your father and your mother, the Most High sifts us out this truth, okay? Right? Put out our lamps, okay? Let's go to that precept. I want Proverbs, I think it's 20 and verse 19, 20. Yeah, it's Proverbs 20 and verse 20. Whoso cursed his father or his mother, his lamps shall be put out in obscured darkness, right? So meaning the Lord said, hey, you're going to get sifted out of the truth for cursing your father and your mother, right? So that's deep when you think about it, right? Because you're breaking the commandments, right? That's Exodus 20 to 20 chapter, right? The 12th verse, okay? So honor thy father and thy mother, all right? That thy day may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, right? Let's go back to Exodus 21. Exodus 21 and verse 18. This is Exodus 21 and 18. And if men strive together and one smite another with a stone or with his fist, and he die not, but keepeth his bed, right? So meaning he might get into a fight, with a brother, and he might take it too far and pick up a stone and, knock him out. And now he is in the bed. And let's just say you might have a business or a job, and now you are out of work for, for 10 days. Okay. Right. 19. If he, read again, verse 19, if he rise again and walk abroad upon his staff, then shall he that smart him be quit, slacky. Only he shall pay for the loss of his time, and shall cause him to be thoroughly slacky, healed it, right? So, man, how can I say this? Right, meaning if he's not charged for the murder, because this guy survived who that man beat it, right? So, but that man got to pay him for that money, right? That he lost for his business, because he could have been selling, 10 oxen in a day. So you have to pay him for, loss of his time, right? Should cause him to be thoroughly healed. What that mean? You have to, bring that brother herbs, because, you have to check on him, and, you might not want to do it. But guess what? You got to do it, because you have to bridge that gap, and you got to make things right. So, you got to cause this brother to be healed. And also, you have to apply this to the truth, every day. And, when a brother, might break his leg, and you have to check up on that brother, or if that brother need help on his bills, etc., etc. And these laws are not, done away with. And we have to apply them, every day. And it's truth, right? So, man, so if your brother, get into a fight, and he get jammed up, you gotta help a brother, man. He gotta get his health back right, okay? Right? So verse 20. And if a man smite his servant or his maid with a rod, and he die under his hand, he shall be surely punished, it, right? So meaning, that is murder. That is murder, right? And you can't just go out there and chop off a servant or a maid finger and laugh at it, all right? You can't do that, all right? 21. Notwithstanding, if he continue a day or two, he shall not be punished it, for he is his money, right? Meaning that's your property, all right? Verse 22, if men strive and hurt a woman with child, so that her fruit depart from her, and yet no mischief follow, he shall be surely punished it, according as the woman husband will lay upon him, and he shall pay as the judges determine mine, slacky. Meaning you might get into it with a brother, right? And you might bump his woman, and her pregnancy, is induced it, and the baby come out. But the baby come out healthy, and there is no mischief that follow, right? And you got to pay that brother according to what he said, okay? Right? And whatever it is, and you have to pay it. You got to pay up, all right? Let's see what's going to say on the next chapter, all right? On the next verse, on the next verse, 23. And if any mischief follow, then thou shalt give life for life, right? Meaning if that baby come out and something is wrong with that baby because you couldn't control your temper, and you pushed that brother, and his woman fell down the stairs, and that baby came out, and it wasn't good. That baby died, okay? And then you had to give life for life, okay? Right? Let's read the next verse. Verse 24. Verse 24. Eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. 25. Burning for burning, wound for wound, strike for strike. Verse 26. And if a man smite the eye of his servant or the eye of his maid, that it perish, he shall let him go free for his eye's sake, right? So meaning, man, if you punch this guy in the eye and his eye, fall out, or his eye go blind, man, let that brother go free, all right? So you can't keep oppressing him, and you got to let him go, all right? And there's mercy in the law too, all right? So, and this is called mercy right here, all right? Verse 27. And if he smite out his manservant tooth or his maid servant's tooth, he shall let him go free for his tooth's sake, right? So meaning you have to let your servant or maid servant go free if you knock out their tooth, okay? All right, self-explanatory. Verse 28. If any ox gore a man or a woman, that they die, then the ox shall be surely stoned, and his flesh shall not be eaten, but the owner of the ox shall be quit. Should be quit, right? Meaning the ox had to be stoned to death if a man or a woman die, right? And no, you can't eat that ox flesh, because that ox is a murder, and that spirit will hop on you, okay? Right? And the owner will not be charged for the ox killing the man or woman, because the ox had a spirit on him, and it happens, right? Okay? Verse 29. Verse 29. But if the ox were wont to push with his horn in time past, and it had been testified to his owner, and he had not kept him in, but that he had killed it a man or a woman, the ox shall be stoned, and his owner also shall be put to death, right? So meaning that ox got a reputation, all right, for lashing out, wanting to gore someone, right? And you don't want to control your ox, and you don't want to lock up your ox in the gate. And guess what? That ox gore someone, and that owner will be held accountable, because the owner knows the spirit on this beast, and he knows that the ox is supposed to be locked up in the gate. And you have people complaining to the owner about this ox, right? Charging and trying to gore everyone, but now he killed a man, and you knew better to keep that ox locked it up in the gate. Or for another example, a dog. You know, if that dog bites someone, it's the same concept, okay? Now, you know, but this ox is a murder. People in the city, right? Okay? So that ox got to get stoned, and that owner get put to death. So you have to control these beasts out here and have some wisdom, okay? Right? Verse 30. If there be laid on him a sum of money, then he shall give for the ransom of his life whatsoever is laid upon him, right? Meaning, this man might say, hey, look, we have the right to stone you, but pay me instead. So you getting stoned, you got to pay me a ransom, okay? And maybe about 50,000 shekels now, all right? But if he can't afford to pay that ransom, then he will be in the spirit world with his damn ox, okay? Right? It's self-explanatory, right? That he couldn't control. And you might give him a time limit for he figure it out, and he's going to come up with that money. And if he don't come up with that money, guess what? Hey, he's gonna be in the spirit world with his ox, okay? Right? Verse 31. Whether he have gorted a son or have gorted a daughter, according to this judgment shall it be done unto him. Right? Verse 32. If the ox shall push a manservant or a maidservant, he shall give unto their master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned. Right? Okay? Meaning the ox might, injure this guy. You might, had a worker, and you got to pay for your work, and you need to hire another worker, right? Because your worker is out of work now, and now you need 30 shekels, because that's the price of a slave, right? And and think about it. Remember, Judas gave up Yahushua for 30 shekels, right? So that's the price of a slave. So right. So you have slaves out of work, but them apples are not going to pick themselves. Okay. So you need to hire another worker for 30 shekels of silver. Okay. Right. Verse 33. And if a man shall open a pit, or if a man shall dig a pit and not cover it, and an ox or an ass fall therein, verse 34, the owner of the pit shall make it good and give money unto the owner of them, and the dead beast shall be his. Right? Verse 35, And if one man ox hurt another, that he die, then they shall sell the live ox and divide the money of it, and the dead ox also they shall divide. Right? So meaning, if an ox hurt another oxen, and the ox die, and they shall, sell the oxen that is alive and divide the money, and the dead ox also, they should divide. Right? Verse 36. Or if it be known that the ox had used it to push in time past, and his owner have not kept him in, he shall surely pay ox for oxen, and the dead shall be his own. Right? Meaning that ox got that pusher spirit and like to charge people, and his owner had not kept him in and let him run free, and you have to pay ox for ox. Right? And the dead shall be his own. Right? So another thing I want to talk about also, back in, in the ancient world, an ox was, a livelihood, because the ox, it helped you, get your, land right and break up the ground. And the ox was, part of our lives, and you needed an ox back then. Right? So, so you have entire laws and precepts dedicated on how to deal with oxen if something, happened. Right? So these are laws, Exodus 21 chapter, right? Go into the judgment of the law. So you brothers and sisters new to the truth, right? Y'all need to get y'all pen and paper. All right, go to Dollar Tree, get y'all some pen and paper. Write these precepts down. All right, okay. To study over these laws. All right, like I say, I know y'all new to the truth. It's out there on the highways and byway. We teach them. Quit breaking the Sabbath. Women need to dress with fringes on. Men need fringes on their shirt. Stop smoking weed. Stop smoking cigarettes, etc., etc. Give them the 5-6 commandment to work on. After that, it's time to, get into the more laws. All right? Okay? So, right. So, but anyway, I want to give honor and glory to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua. Shalom.